I'm Inniss, and I'm Anudda Bajan. From earlier in primary school, I remember somebody had brought 2 sheep and gave to me and my brother. It went from, and then my uncle had pigs. So that's why I'm not a sportsman right now, because we always had animals. So when you come home on evenings, well, all the other fellas playing cricket and football, I gotta be out grazing the sheep. I gotta be dealing with the pigs and that type of stuff. I remember my days at primary school, whereas in that we were given the task of bringing home the pig food on evenings. And that used to be very embarrassing for me as a boy. I actually used to sit in the schoolyard on evenings and wait until lots of the other children would have left school before I left with the pig food to bring home on evenings. That was until I was given my first set of money at $350 at probably 9 years old, after the pig was slaughtered and sold. From then, I would say that I became an entrepreneur from at age 9, between 9 and 10. That brought me into, you see all that embarrassment? That was out, because at 9 years old, I was given $350 for myself. So that embarrassment went right through the door. Lots of the other children at school on evenings wasn't seeing the $350. So it was there from then that it made me into basically who I am. So being an entrepreneur at between the ages from 9, I remember there's a tamarind tree not too far away. And again, having money in my hand to be mine, I decided, you know what? I am going to sell some tamarind balls. For those persons who don't know, tamarind balls is basically tamarind and sugar and a little essence. And for me, that was the takeoff. I remember wrapping them in some little saran wrap, taking them to school, and then during that time, a tamarind ball was at least about 50 cents. And you take out your mother's sugar, so you ain't had to spend any money to put in. So again, that was generating lots of profit. And my main customers was my friends. So then it went from tamarind balls. So I asked mom to buy some little bags for me, what we in Barbados call a soccer bubby. Everybody know it was a soccer bubby. And let me tell you, back then, the soccer bubby then was at least about 70 cents. The only thing that I seen from there was that my mother was buying the bags, and that was basically it. Most of my clientele was my friends. I remember my father bringing a little cooler for me. Boy, I felt so fussy back in the time when he heard that I was selling these icy things. Well, again, soccer bubbies. My father gave me a cooler, something like probably about a foot by a foot. And I felt like that's the greatest achievement that I had ever get. So, living so close to Shrewsbury School, I would ease home from school, grab the little box with the ices in it, and ease back to school. And that's where we sell my little things at school. We had the soccer bubby, and I had the tamarind balls. So that generated my little spending money. Moving on from there was secondary school. I had fish that I would carry to school. I used to sell fish at school. This was all unknown to the authorities, because I remember back then I think it was some little rule that school children were not supposed to be involved in selling things. So I used to take to school fish. And that was there was Siamese fighters then. That was a big catch at Princess, no pun intended. That was a big catch at Princess Margaret, me selling Siamese fighters. During that time, they used to sell for like $7. That was my lunch money. That was my money to buy shoes for at the end of the term, a lot of type of stuff to go out. So again, I remember, yes, it was fish. What else I used to sell? there was something else. I don't recall at the time, but there was something else I used to sell. They used to actually call me the hustler from back then. So yeah, that's basically where the entrepreneurship starts, from back then at school, at the Princess Margaret School. So I left Princess Margaret School. I went on to the then back Samuel Jackman Prescott Polytechnic to do plumbing. Now that was a course that I really didn't care much for, because it was a second chance that I got in. I didn't get into doing what I wanted to do, which was architectural drafting. So being at the SJPP at that time, I really was not interested, to be honest. But again, at that age, 16, 17, you're still living under your mother's roof. You had to do what your mother say. So, but then I got an interview to go to work for the airline, American Airlines, and that piqued my interest there. American Airlines actually piqued my interest, and I gained the interest. I gained the braveness to tell my mother, no, Greeter Inniss was a very strict disciplinarian. Since I got the little 2-day job at American Airlines, and I say, you know what, this is what Ryan want to do. Now that's being a little young at start. I got the courage one day and I came home and I tell my mother, no, listen, Mom, I working at American Airlines now, and I think I done with the Polytechnic. She said, wait, you's a madman? I said, Mom, I ain't a madman, but I think that is where my mind wants to be. And if that you want to continue wasting your money with me going to the Polytechnic. She said, well, I hope you know being at the airport ain't gonna give you a trade. It's from there that I realized my mother may be wrong by saying it may not give me a trade, but that was where my interest was. The Polytechnic was not. So she allowed me to leave the Polytechnic, and I start working at the airline, American Airlines. And that was it from there. I started with doing aircraft maintenance. And talk about putting on a shirt to just make yourself feel more important. They had a uniform that says aircraft maintenance. And just putting on that shirt on evenings to leave work to catch the bus made me feel like a superhero. Just by that logo saying what it said. And people would look at me, were you so young and you go, yes, I work at the airport. Hardly knew anything about aircraft maintenance, but just wearing that logo made me feel on top of the world. It made me feel again like somebody. So years passed, I left from there then, went on to do sales. Then I ended back again where my heart was, at the airport again. Started doing some aircraft security. Thanks for my supervisor at the time, Mr. Kevin Bourne. He saw potential in me, and I moved up from doing aircraft security to going checking in people. And I thought one day, you know what? This checking in people thing ain't working for me. Every day I put in people on a plane and closing a plane door. That wasn't working for me. So I started to try my hand. I applied then to LIAT 1974 Limited at the time. And boy on the whole, they wrote me back and said they want me. I remember I got so much lick at the airport for that. They said, oh, I progressing too fast. But it was in me not to just stay in one position. I didn't come to the airport just to stay in one position. Every day I put in people on a plane and not going on the plane, I said no, So I applied to LIAT, and as the Barbados people say, tutus, they called me and said they want me to come up to Antigua for an interview. Boy, that was another highlight in my life. I got accepted to be part of flight crew, and again, that raised my interest in lots of travel, and that's where my traveling really started in. I became part of flight crew in 2000 and I think it was 2002. 2002, I think it was. I started flying with LIAT. Flying all over the Caribbean, and there I met lots of prime ministers, during that time, you had to know all the prime ministers, because if a prime minister come on board, you had to know all the prime ministers. So then it was then that I was exposed to lots of politicians, what we in Barbados call big up people. And it made me start to have a different perspective on speaking, socializing, because it all depends on who you socialize with, your background. So start intermingle with these people, you learn to speak different, because during flight crew, obviously you got to up your game. So yeah, I became friends with the likes of the Prime Minister back then from St. Lucia. I became friends with the Prime Minister from St. Vincent. That when they get on board, they will be saying, "Hi Ryan," and I mean, people will be looking at me like, "Wait, you're friends with the Prime Minister?" Oh yes, I'm friends with the Prime Minister. Again, that raised the bar with who I am. In later years, I left Leah and decided to come back home. Where then it was a choice of being in the police force, the fire service, or a radio DJ. I got the first response from the police force, and I remember the first month being at the regional police training center then. When we were allowed visits, my mom came down to say hello, and she said to me that the radio station had sent a letter saying that they would they invite me to come over to an interview and stuff. But then I was saying, well, I already in the police force, let me stay. I remember being in the police force then. It was a great that add to my background of who I am again today. I spent 13 years in the Royal Barbados Police Force. I said Royal Barbados Police Force because back then it was the Royal Barbados Force, is now the Royal Police Service. So I know it as the Royal Barbados Police Service. I never went from the rank of constable. During my time, I used to just go out there, do my job to the best ability, and I was happy with that. In 2018, that's when I decided that, you know what, I was turning, I think it was just before my birthday, and I decided then that, hell, you know what, at the age 40, I don't think I want to work for anybody anymore. And that's when I made the decision and took the risk to leave the Royal Barbados Police Force to come and do what I am doing today, where I am the director of the Marizayra Sanctuary. I remember my colleagues back then saying to me, "Ryan, you sure," well, they said Ryan, they said, "Inniss, you sure that's what you want to do, to go and run a zoo?" I said, "Boy, that is what I want to do. I know it's a big risk, but I said, you know what, you're going to be getting paid as much as we getting paid now." I said, well, one thing that my father Earl Weeks always tell me is don't chase after money, go after your passion. And up to this day, that is what I follow, my passion. So I decided to make that step. At first, within the first year of running the sanctuary, I ain't telling a lie, it was not a bed of roses, because I was not getting the income that I used to get from the police force. But I stick it out because I had the support. I had the support, one, from family who keep me grounded. I would say, well, listen, you know what? This week, Ryan, I'm buying a bag of feed for the animals for you. So even when the income was not coming in as it should back then, I had family who would say they can buy a bag of feed to support the animals. So I always, again, from young to, I always had that support of my family. So I gotta give thanks for them. My father, the late Earl Weeks, always had exotic animals. I don't know where we get them from, but I remember back in the day, my father had iguanas. My father had all kind of different parrots, where those things were very rare around Barbados. We talking back in the 80s. We talking back in the 80s, around 85, 87. That my father always had all kind of different exotic animals. Well, nobody in Barbados has something called gerbils. My father had those things. Again, I don't know where we get them from. So I always grew up in that kind of light. So I was never a dog fan. I was never a cat fan. For me, I guess I had the exotic kind of blood thing in me to always want exotics. And that's how Marizayra Sanctuary was created. Because I find that there were lots of persons who had exotics here on the island, and they will let them go when they either become too big, too aggressive, or just bored of them. So that's why I decided then to let me start taking in these animals and give them a second chance. Instead of they're out there destroying the ecosystem of Barbados, let me give them a second chance here at Marizayra Sanctuary. There were lots of animals that came into the island illegally, and at either the seaport or the airport, that were euthanized. So then these animals, sometimes the authorities will call me and say, well, do you have a setup for this place that these animals can live on? Cool. So that's basically how it started. And then I had people who would donate animals then here to me. I have a supportive family, where is in that my mother, she's retired, great Inniss, she's retired, but she still works here. She still, all the greenery that you see around the sanctuary, my mother takes care of. She has a green thumb. So all of the plants, all that stuff she does. Pruning the plants, she would come out here and take off every little dead leaf to make sure all the flowers are watered, all that type of stuff. My mother does. My wife, she does the administrative work when it comes to accounting and that type of stuff. My family now, the other side of the family, my brothers, they do lots of marketing for me. So there's a sister company which my eldest sibling operates, called Earth Mother Botanicals. So it's a cooperation between Earth Mother Botanicals and Marizayra Sanctuary. So she basically does lots of the advertisement with Earth Mother Botanicals / Marizayra Sanctuary. I look forward to making this place a better place for educating the Barbadian public on what we have here. I suffered a stroke back in 2016. For those who know, you'll see that my mouth is still a little twisted on the left. But great thanks for the staff at the QEH who got me back on my feet, literally. I remember that day leaving from work. I was in the police force back then, and I left work early to attend a funeral at the Trinity. Was supposed to go to the Trinity church. I never made it. So that day I left work, I already got a headache. While driving home, I got to boarding hall area, and I realized that my truck then had a flat. So there I am trying to hustle in a tire that I'm not supposed to be in to start with, and I'm trying to change this flat tire in the sun, and I already got a headache too. And yeah, that was stress. Drove home, unprepared that day. I picked out a white shirt to wear to the funeral, and there I am trying now to press the shirt, and there was a dirty mark on the iron which ruined the shirt. So had to look for a whole new shirt. Again, that set me back. So then I decided I needed to get a haircut. There then I asked a friend of mine who was here at my house then to cut my hair quickly for me, and that was basically the last thing that I remembered that day. I think it was a Friday, you know. Anyhow, it was a Friday, and that was the last thing that I remember sitting in that chair. I woke up the night time because after then regaining consciousness, let me backtrack to tell you guys that being in that chair, sitting in that chair, the last thing I remember was getting my hair cut. Woke up hours later in the night time, have all these things attached to me at the QEH hospital. I remember the doctor then, at the time, there were doctors and nurses over me asking me, Mr. Inniss, you know where you are? Trying to gain consciousness, I said, well, saying that I got all these things hooked up on me, I gotta be at the hospital. They say, you know what happened to you? I said, no, but being a juvenile person I am, I try to tell them, well, you gotta tell me. But the words just could not come out. I remember trying to speak and it's like my bottom lip would not open. And they were telling me, all right, don't try to talk to me. I just see my mother there, all confused, and they explained to me that I suffered a mild stroke. I guess it was through the stress of leaving work with a headache. I used to have bad headaches. Leaving work with a headache, trying to change the tire in the hot blazing sun, coming home, stressing out, trying to get to this funeral that I never made to. So yeah, that was, again, thanks for the therapy and stuff that I've gotten, that I received from the medical staff at the QEH back then, that I managed to get over. During my speech, you may still hear a little slur. I still do suffer from a little slur sometimes in my speech, but all of the other body functions I've managed to recover from. Sometimes I do still walk with a little limp with the left foot, but that's quite cool. It is what it is. My heart is still beating, so I am satisfied to be here today. My best friend, supporter, father. Again, I speak about the great, I call him great, the great Earl Weeks. Mr. Earl Weeks was a disciplinarian, and as he rests in his grave today, I am thankful for he being the person he was, where everything had to be straight. I don't remember, it was December, I think it was December or November, something like that. The day that he died, my father and I went, because we were very close. When I tell you close, you remember I told you that I used to fly for Liat? I would call up my father and say, listen, and I would be in another country. I would say, listen, get to the airport now. Bring your passport, get to the airport now. And he'd be like, where we going now? We're going to some other Caribbean country, and this is probably like on a day off. Let's say I'm coming in to be on a day off. I pick up my father and we go some Caribbean country. So my father was then my best buddy, my pal. He was everything to me. It was a Sunday when my father left us. And from there is when my life felt like it was no more. Because this is a person that, again, I was old enough that I could tell my father basically anything. And it was dead there. He would tell me either, listen, that's not the way. As old as I was, he would either tell me that's not the way or go for it. When I first started doing my pilot license, my father was the first person that took me to do that. And he paid out a lot of money to, again, so that's where it shows the closeness between me and my father. So the day that he died, the morning time, I remember we been to the beach down to Bass Rock. And during all that time, he was complaining for his stomach. We were out in the sea and he was complaining that his stomach was burning him. God, if I only knew that day, later on that night time that my father would have left, I would have had him probably at the closest medical center. Anyhow, so we were out swimming and complaining for his stomach, that his stomach was burning. So he asked me, you want something to eat? We're going to get something to eat. We ate, we went home, and I was supposed to go and cut his hair later the evening time. Never made it. That night time, probably around 7 o'clock, my older brother called me and said that we were taking Daddy to the hospital because he wasn't feeling well. I said to him, but from today he wasn't feeling well. I thought, and I remember hearing him say in the background, man, tell Ryan don't worry to come down here now. That was during the night time. So because I heard him in the background saying, tell Ryan don't worry to come down here now, I said, well, I know my father never complained for any ailments or something, so I never left home that night. And that was the worst decision I ever made in my whole entire life, not going to see my father. I got a call around 10:30 the night time, again from the older brother, saying to me, giving me a big long speech, oh, Daddy have raised us in to be men. I said, what happened? What the whole long speech? And that's when he then said, I just want you to know that Daddy gone. I said, me gone where? This is the man that I would have just left this morning, swimming, all good. He said, Daddy gone. So I started to question him, gone where? He said, boy, Daddy just passed away. So that day, from that day up to this day, I've never recalled ever having a pain in my heart like that. I remember I rushed down to the medical facility on the West Coast, and there I saw my father lying on the bed. That ripped my world apart. Because again, if it was 3 o'clock in the morning and I in Puerto Rico and I got an issue, as old as I was, I used to call him Mr. Weeks. I said, Mr. Weeks, I have such and such an issue, and he would guide me. So seeing my father there on that hospital, on that bed, totally ripped my heart apart. And I must say that is from there that gained challenges in my life. As much as before, where I would say, man, that ain't an issue. As much problem, money issues, I would never let get to me. But it's then that when my father was there dead, from that day, I started to find it hard to relate to certain issues. Because again, any issue I would call and say, Daddy, what do you think? And he would tell me X, Y, Z. Not having him there on the other line or in person to answer me was the biggest break in my life. The biggest breakdown in my life. And up to this day, as much as he's gone on, it still hurts because he was my #1 advisor back then. That was my biggest breakdown in life. That I really miss him. But I know that he really does live on in me. That is what I can say. He really does live on in me. I'm Ryan Inniss. I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm a caregiver, I'm a proud tourism player, and another Bajan.